All right, everybody. I have 11 o'clock our time zone. I know that a lot of you are joining us from around the world. Want to wish you welcome and thank you for joining our first Tech Talk of 2024. My name is Bob Foreman. I'm going to be the moderator and, if you permit me, the interviewee for a very special guest that we have here at today's Tech Talk meeting, Mr. Richard Taylor. And Richard Taylor and I will be talking about the latest of our book series, actually a brand new book series that we're launching called Mastering HPCC Systems. If you take a look at the chat, there is a QR code for a link to the page where you can download these books. And you know, the price here is going to kind of maybe floor you. It's actually free. So we have done this for the community. It's our goal to reach out to the community to provide good content, good material, in addition to the already fantastic documentation that we have on the HPCC Systems portal. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our guest of the day of the Tech Talk, Mr. Richard Taylor. Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Good morning. Can anybody see me?
I think so. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this. Let's just go back over here real quickly. There we go. So we'll pop ourselves in view. There we are.
There we are.
So welcome again, Richard. For the benefit of the people that do not know you, which is probably maybe one person out there, what is your role at Ellen Risk, and how long have you been working with HPCC Systems and ECL, the enterprise control language?
My role, whipping boy, worst guy on the block. What do you think? I started with HPCC Systems on the day that it was invented. The fact that we the platform started with a previous company called Sizent that was acquired by Lexis in 2004, and the platform actually began its development in 1999, long time ago. So I was working there at Sizent. We got acquired in 2004, and the rest is history. And the interesting bit is that the team of the people that I've been working with for on this HPCC platform, the guys in England, Richard Chapman, Gavin Halliday, Jake Smith, who else? David Bayless, Gordon Smith.
Can't forget Gordon.
Let's not forget Nigel Hicks. I was working with those guys back in the early 90s in a different company. So I've been working basically with these Cambridge and Oxford brainiacs for over 30 years through 4 different companies at this point.
Fantastic. So yes, of course, we've been using now HPCC Systems, and ECL has been around for now, I guess we'd say 23, 24 years.
Yeah, it began in 4th quarter of the year 2000 is when we developed the ECL, the first version of the ECL language, and yeah, my role was when we needed a language reference, I wrote the language reference. When we needed a programmer's guide, I wrote the programmer's guide. When we needed somebody to teach people how to program it, that's what I started doing. I did that for a lot of years all alone, and then bam, Bob came along in 2011. Yay. And I had help.
Make no mistake, though, the original product that happened 23, 24 years ago is nowhere near the robustness and deep support that we have for big data. What was the size of that language reference manual that you first wrote way back then?
The very first language reference manual that I wrote, I literally did it overnight because I was asked to produce it for a meeting the next day, was 17 pages. And it's now like 350, 400 pages, and it's a big book. And
Yeah, big shout out to Jim DeFabia. He's joining us in this meeting, Richard. So he is now our documentation chief, and with Greg. And see, I'm not going to say his last name because every time I'm under pressure, I always step on his name. But there you
Pelagiotatos.
go. Thank you for bailing me out there. But Jim and Greg have been the documentation leads now for many years. And we've been open source now, for those of you that may not be aware of that, since 2011. So that's why, people go like 23, 24 years. How come we didn't know about HPCC or ECL sooner? And the reason was, well, we took our time and made some careful thought as to making this available to the community. And then that was 2011 that we did that. And our goal, of course, is not only to share our technology with all of you, but also for you to contribute back to the HPCC with suggestions and improvements. And over the last few years that we've been open source, that's been the case. And this is one of those things. Richard, tell us about this latest project that we're all here for.
Well, we're here because we've got a series of books now that are available on Amazon and Google. They're both on Amazon and Google, and it's called Mastering HPCC Systems. The first book, Bob, can we put up the slide of the?
Absolutely, I'm getting there right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Amazon page.
Yep, here we are.
There we go. If you go out to Amazon with that link that's in the chat, they will take you to this particular page where we've got 3 books out there. And scroll that down. I want to see all 3. There we go. Oh, no, they're perfect. And you'll find that the one in the middle, of course, is the first book in the series, Platform Overview and History. It's a brief overview of how the platform was developed, why it was developed, and things like that. And then if you're brand new to ECL, the next one in the series that you're going to want to play with is Fundamentals of ETL Processing, because that's going to teach you all the fundamentals of the ECL language as you go through the extract, transform, and load process, the standard data ingest process that everybody needs to do with any data project at all. And then once you've gone through that book, you can find the ECL cookbook down there. Is got a lot of really cool things in there that are basically a brain dump of all the tech support questions I've answered for many years, although I've taken some of the answers as they originally were and vastly extrapolated from the original answer to provide useful tools that anybody can use. All the code in these books, it's free for download from a GitHub repo. And so you don't have to copy and paste from the book. You can just get the code and start playing with it. And it's basically a work in progress.
And we'll talk more about what that means as we get through the tech talk here.
Yeah.
Hey, what gave you the idea to put these books together? I know the story, but let's share it with the community how we got the first idea to do these external books outside of our normal documentation.
Well, I took a look around after we went open source, and the problem with being open source is that people expect it to be free, and the platform is, but they also expect to be able to find information about it. For example, what else is open source that we compete with? That would be like Hadoop. And if you go out to Amazon and do a search through their bookstore for books on Hadoop, you'll find a bunch of them. You do a search on Amazon for HPCC Systems books, and you don't find anything. There are a couple of academic tomes that had been out there that were put together by I think was it Borko Furt at FAU, along with his cohorts there. And I know that Taghi and Flavio contributed to that, but they were basically scientific academic things, and what was missing was a real a for dummies type of approach, where somebody can that knows nothing about the platform can get these and learn enough to be productive without even necessarily taking our classes. So the purpose of these books is to provide a free resource that's available on a commercial platform out there, where normally you would expect to go find books on computer programming. Well, that's where you're going to find these books, out there on Amazon. Where else do you go to get books? And of course Google Play. So the whole point here is to plug that gaping hole of no books available. These are now available, and they do not take the same approach as the training courses that Bob so great, Bob teaches, that I taught for so many years. The books follow a different path through learning ECL, so that it is not exactly the same as what we teach. It's a very different approach, and it's designed to get you up to speed and running really fast with the ECL as quickly as possible.
Amazing. Yeah, fantastic. I know that, and you love writing too. This is not your first book, right? You've written some books before.
Oh, well, I think my very first book was published in 1992. No, 91. It was 1991. It was Tips, Tricks, and Techniques for Clarion Professional Developer 2.1 for DOS.
Yeah, that has a story behind it. Plus, you've done some novels too, besides the technical stuff, right?
I do have one novel that was published, and if anybody out there wants to write a novel, go ahead. You will find that it is the most work you will ever do for the least return on investment ever possible. In other words, not everybody can sell as many copies as Tom Clancy.
Yeah, it's a shame, and it's a shame we just don't have enough time in the world to read all the books that have been out there, and some good books too.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been reading about rock stars' biographies and stuff, like Todd Rundgren and Dave Grohl, and just interesting stories about how they all went from pretty much rags to riches. So that's been my latest thing.
Well, in the book world, that rags to riches story is, of course, J.K. Rowling, who was literally on the dole, on welfare, when she started writing Harry Potter. Yep.
Well, speaking of putting books together, what was the biggest challenge of putting these books together?
It takes time to come up with good ideas, particularly for things like the cookbook. And what I've done for many years is I've always taken emails that people send me asking questions about how to do things, and online posts on the forum that we used to have, that's now replaced with the Stack Overflow. And whenever I do a piece of example code that I think is probably worth doing something with in a broader context, I've always squirreled it away. So I've got this whole directory full of code snippets that I went through to create the ECL cookbook. Of course, the ETL processing code, it's a standard process, and we teach that standard process also in the online training courses and the remote training that we do face to face. But I took and decided to follow a different approach than we do in the actual formal courses. I took a more show you how to do things the way an expert would do. So therefore, in the courses, we always build from the simple to the complex. Whereas in the book, one of the first things that you're going to learn how to do is a function macro, because that's a useful tool, and it's not something that we get to in the courses until the end. So,
yeah, the good news is that ECL as a language now has been well established, proven, and pretty solid now. Although, from release to release, we get some improvements in the language as far as the performance and speed. So always, rule number one, everyone out there, is make sure that you're updated with the latest and greatest versions of the IDEs and the client tools that are released by HPCC Systems. And but the biggest challenge, I think, also over the last few years, which I thought was very daunting, was the fact that we're also moving to the cloud. So, where we had HPCC as more of a bare metal platform, now we have been making a conscious and directed effort to move to cloud native and containerized systems. And so that also was a challenge, especially with your first book, the platform overview in history. That was kind of one of the biggest challenges that you had. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, well, the thing is that I'm not in these books. I'm not attempting to show you how to install the platform or anything like that. We've got great documentation that does that. I'm approaching these books purely from the ECL side of things, and so that's why the platform overview and history. We talk about the components of the platform and how they work together, but it doesn't go into detail about how to set up your very first HPCC cluster. So the fact is all you got to do is go to the HPCCsystems.com website and go look at the documentation, and that stuff will tell you more than I could possibly tell you about setting up hardware. Because the bottom line here is I'm not an operating system guy. I'm not a networking guy. I'm not a systems guy. I am a programmer. I deal in logic and context and data and how to manipulate data. And so these books are focusing on what I know best, which is programming in ECL.
Wonderful. Thank you, Richard. I want to jump over just briefly over to the chat. I think we'll just take a little sidetrack here and look at some questions that some people have had. We asked you when you signed up if you had any questions for the author, and so I wanted to address these right up front. So I know some of you have been waiting, and yes, we did hear you. The first question that was asked was one of certification and ECL certification. What's your take on that, Richard, about a certification program for ECL?
It's something that we've talked about many times, but we've never completely implemented certification. We've done some work along those lines, but there isn't a really big demand for certification that needs to occupy the resources that it would take to do that. We do offer badges, and Bob, you're the badge master. Why don't you tell people about the badges that they can get?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Richard. Sure. We've started a badge program. Actually, I can actually go out to the website here real quick and show them as well. Let me just go ahead and I think they might want me to log in a little bit here. Let's take care of that. There we are. So in the HPCC Systems community, we have this a set of digital badges for different classes that you complete. For example, here's HPCC Systems Introduction to ECL Parts 1 and 2. From there, we go to either you have a different path you can take, of course. Starting next week, if you have some time next week and you want to set up, we're still open for that. I'm actually delivering a live course for this class right here, HPCC Systems Roxy ECL. And of course, there's another digital badge of the man climbing up the mountain a little bit higher. And then after that class, we have the advanced ECL class, which again, he's making his move up the mountain. And once you complete all three of the core classes, then I'd like to issue this badge here with the little man on top waving the flag. And so all of your core ECL competency classes have been completed.
They've made the top of Kilimanjaro. Yay!
Exactly right. And then you've got machine learning. There's a badge for our machine learning course. You have if you're a manager and not really into programming, but you just want to learn about the platform and some of the technology and keywords, there is an HPCC managers course that you can take and get a badge for that. All these badges can be shared on your social media. You can, share them on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. They're all very shareable and ready to go for any social media platform that you might be involved in. So yeah, that's our badge system. Thank you for asking about that, Richard. We do, instead of certification, we like to award badges once you've completed these lessons and completed the ECL examples, then we issue badges to you in that respect. All right, so that answers certification, I think. How about now? This is a question I don't know about you, Richard. I think, and I've known you for a long time, but somebody asked, what is your favorite ECL topic?
Oh God. The one that is being presented to me at the moment. You know, I like to look at every question that's asked to me as a challenge of how can I do that? How can I especially like the questions that, you know, it's not necessarily a simple answer, which is the genesis for many of the code snippets that are in the ECL cookbook, is because I get asked a question, how do you do this? And I have to ask myself, how would I do that? Because it's not a simple, straightforward, oh, use the blarg function and it will do it for you. No, it's never that easy, because doing things that are fundamentally simple to do by looping through stuff and writing procedural code is one of the standard newbie type of humps that they have to get over to get really masterful with ECL. Is you have to start thinking about how you do things in ECL differently, because ECL is not a procedural language, it's a declarative language. And you don't tell the computer what to do, you tell the computer what it is that you want. And taking a different approach, the entire language is set based, so you don't have any looping constructs, you don't have any go-tos. The order of execution is not necessarily and end up being the same as the order in which you wrote the code. These are things where you have to think about, how do I construct and define what it is that I want to end up with, in such a manner that the compiler can turn that into meaningful C++ code that will actually accomplish the job. And so that's the thing, is just present me with the challenge, and I become a pit bull with a bone. You know, I'm gonna gnaw at that problem until I either figure it out, or I come back and say, sorry, you can't do that the way we think that we ought to do that. You'll have to find another way to do it. Yeah, and I do answer that sometimes, because sometimes it's that is the answer, is because of the fundamental difference in the language. Things that would be simple to do in a procedural language are sometimes impossible to do in a non-procedural language.
You think it's a hard language to learn? I've heard people tell me, yeah, they start people off on the wrong foot. This is what I mean. And I'm not going to name any names, but I've heard people who are in our company who have said, "Oh, it's a tough language to learn," you know. And I just kind of like hold my tongue, because I don't want to get involved with a debate there. But you know, David Bayless, for those of you out there, he is the inventor of the enterprise control language. And one of the things that David has said time and time again is, you know, keep things simple, like what Richard was talking about. That normally, look, the developers of Thor and Roxy and the developers of the language they've spent hours and years working on this product to make it easier for us. So we don't have to tell the compiler what to do. We don't have to make things more complex than what it really is. I think that's my biggest pet peeve, is especially when I'll see code submitted to me from colleagues that they've painted themselves into a corner because they've actually made things too difficult. So
Yeah.
let me stop right there. What would you do? Do you agree with that, Richard?
Yeah. The fact is that all of the standard things that everybody always has to do when you're working with data are absolutely covered in the language. It's when you need to accomplish something that's not standard, that's a one-off type of unique situation, where you need to do things that's not common, and that's where you can get into problems, because if you start thinking of how can I do this and you start thinking, okay, I've written C++ code for the last 35 years, and I've been playing with ECL for 2 years, and you know, the thought process that instantly goes through is, how would I do this in C++? Well, you can't think that way. You can't do that in ECL. You have to approach it from the problem of working backwards. What's the result I want, and how can I tell define the constructs in ECL that will create that result?
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, that answers, there was a couple of questions that I had. I think we've answered a bunch of them with that little discussion. For example, any message you want to give to the HPCC and ECL users out there, you know, any words of wisdom? And I think we just covered that.
Well, I think the biggest message is, even if you've been programming in ECL for 20 years, download these 3 books and go through them. You probably will find some things that you have not bothered to occur, that haven't occurred to you before. And the reason for that is because, like I said, I've built this whole thing from code snippets that I've answered individual questions for the last 20 years.
Yep. And we'll take a look at that in just a few minutes. All right. Let's see. We have a good question in the Zoom chat from someone. Let's see. Suppose if I use this book for my self-study, how to spray ECL code in a cluster, how to use the cluster without authentication. Is it free?
Okay. The answer to that is pretty simple. Number one, to get a cluster without authentication, simply go out to the HPCCsystems.com and get the containerized book that Jim DeFabia is going to put in the chat, the link to. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that when you do that. But the containerized book that will tell you how to create a local Docker container on your system, which will create an HPCC environment for you to use, that's just right there on your laptop to play around with. So that will get you a free, non-authenticated cluster that is free, because everything on HPCC Systems is open source. And how to spray the ECL code. Number one, at the beginning of each book, Bob, the link is in the chat now already. Jim
Okay,
beat
great.
you to it.
Yep.
And one of the first pages at the beginning of the book, it talks about all the code in the book. All the code in the book is free, and you can download it from my GitHub repository as a zip file, and you simply unzip it and follow the directions in the books as to how to implement that into your ECL IDE, so that you can actually see that code and run it yourself. So if you use the book for self-study, that's what I recommend you do. Number one, read the first book, and it will tell you the overview and the history, and give you the background and the knowledge needed to be able to meaningfully discuss what the platform is all about. And then go with the ETL processing and download all that ECL code from the repository, unzip it, and get your ECL IDE up, and then just start working through the code. The book will show you all the code. The book will talk about what each line of code does and how it works. And by simply going through that and doing it and playing around with it, you will end up understanding a lot about ECL by the time you get done. Once you get done with the fundamental ETL processing book, go on to the ECL cookbook and look at all that stuff, because there are some really powerful techniques that are demonstrated. See, the point of the book, of all these books, is not just to give you the code for doing the task that the book is having you do, but more importantly, to make sure that you understand what the techniques are so you can extrapolate from that code and use those techniques in your code.
All right, fantastic. All right, I hope that answered that question. I'm pretty sure you covered a lot of bases there. Here's the link to, or here's actually the page where you can download the containerized system. And while I'm here, a lot of times people are always wondering, like, what classes do you have available and where are they and stuff. And I'm always sending emails to people with this link. So if you see under, let's see, learn here, and we go to training and then classes. Here's the latest set of classes. And by the way, Sharon, thank you so much. Sharon Van Arisdale, who's on our team, has spent a lot of hours putting together this page of all the classes all the way through the year. So you can go out to this page here, training/classes, hpccsystems.com. And like I said, our next class is starting on Monday. If you want to learn all about writing code on Thor to prepare queries for Roxy, these two classes will be live and in person next week. So yeah, so that's the platform to get to the classes. Here's the page to get to all of the documentation. So, all right. Thank you for that question. Very good.
Bob, why don't you pull up the IDE and let's take a look at some of the source code from these books.
All right, fantastic. Yep. Here we are. So let me just move my Zoom bar out of the way here. Oh, you can't see it, but I can see it. So, all right, there we are. All right, so right, let's get into this. This is I actually downloaded from, and I wish I had my Zoom tool on here. Let me do that real quickly. This won't take too long. Good tool for teaching, by the way, is called Zoom It. I'm not plugging Microsoft, but that's a very good tool. So now I can zoom in. There we are. Is that better? So yeah, here's my repo, and you see I've downloaded from the repo that Richard pointed out to, the zip file, extracted the zip file onto a folder in my on my machine, and then I've got a root folder here called Mastering HPCC. So you can see that the folders and the code examples have been organized into very convenient subtopics. For example, date tips, date parsing, last day of the month, Unix epic date and time, things that we thought would be important that were not available in the core libraries that can enhance and be more useful to people. And what Richard had said about getting emails and questions about how do I do something. And Richard took a lot of these and said, you know, I've shown people how to do this. Let's show everybody how to do this. A lot of good sections here on file tips. Richard, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Well, we're explicitly looking at the cookbook right now. If you scroll down some, you can open up the for the rest of the book. NYC Taxi and is what is basically all the code that is in the fundamentals of ETL processing book. And then you've also got a util directory with utility functions from all the books that are used by all that. Yep. And then of course you got that demo optimization, which is kind of cool. It was used in one of the at the beginning to talk about how the compiler works, and how it if you run that, you look at this code, and if you run it,
submitting right now.
Okay. And you will see that you get result 1, 2, 3, and 4 of what you did. Now go back to the builder window and go up to the top, and toggle those comments on the demo definition. Well, yeah, there you go. And now run it again.
Only
And
one
you'll
result.
only one result. Because the other results, if the demo is true, run all four. If if it's not true, only run four. And now the interesting thing here is go back down to the demo optimization, the second run.
Oh, second run, yeah.
Yeah, the second run. And look at that. That's Nathan, Carly, Jimmy, and Alfie. And now, okay. And now go back to the result 4 of the first run. Nathan, Carly, Jimmy, and Alfie. But the order is different.
Interesting.
But the sort order is different because there's a sort that doesn't happen. And that's explained in the book. It talks about optimization because the compiler, or what this is demonstrating, is the fact that the ECL code that you write, just because you wrote the code in there, if you're not calling that code, the optimizer, the compiler doesn't use that code, and so it's optimized out.
Wonderful. Cool. Nice example there. I love it.
Yeah, quick.
It's kind of proving, we tell them all the time. This is the actual proof.
Yep. It's a demo of exactly how that works. Because number 4, when you run all 4 of them on the first run, look at the order of the records in the result. Look at the order of the first result. The first result.
First result had
number 4. There we go.
Yep.
Carly, Nathan, Alfie, and Jimmy. And now you go back to the second result. Nathan, Carly, Jimmy, and Alfie. Because these are ordered by last name. But the first time it was, go back to the first time again. First time. And you'll see that these are ordered by last name, but by first name within last name. And but that first name sort got optimized out because it wasn't necessary.
And the magic behind that is this little thing right here,
which is part of the template language.
Yep. So, and by the way, all of you out there, Richard does do a rather deep dive into the template language in his books. So,
yes,
you want to become comfortable and adept at using the template language. These books are worth their weight in gold for that.
It's a very useful tool.
Yep. Many times we get questions on how do I do something in the template language? How do I automate something? That's the other thing too. How do I automate something? And
automation. Well, now you're talking. Now now you're talking about what comes next. This is a 3-book series.
Yes.
Well, is it going to stay a 3-book series? No. I got a 4th book that I am getting closer and closer to being done with that will be added to this system, to this series. And this 4th book will be called Scheduling and Process Automation. So it's going to be a whole book just on how you can schedule jobs to run at particular times or automate processes so that when one process ends, it automatically kicks off a completely separate work unit for another job. And I'll leave that teaser at that.
Yep. All right, so let's see if were there any more questions in the chat. I saw the chat window up in there. No, we're good there so far. Very good. Yeah.
What I would like to see in the chat is if you have not yet, whether you have already downloaded these free books from Amazon or not. So everybody, please go into the chat and tell me yes or no, or you're doing it right now. I'd like to see that kind of feedback.
Right.
Hey. What's that Jeopardy tune?
I have one of our colleagues had had a question for you, Richard. This is a good question. Do you have a good story about one of your training courses that you could share with us? I like the one about the time that you were put into a van with no windows. I don't know if you can how much you can talk about that one.
I was put in a van with no windows.
Yep, and then escorted to a location and back to your hotel again in the area of the Washington, D.C.
I don't know who you heard that story from, but that's total not true. Although I have taught many classes in Washington, D.C. to government agencies that I cannot really talk about. And
Yep.
and suffice it to say that the U.S. government has been using HPCC systems in their processes for almost as long as LexisNexis Risk Solutions has.
I could talk about my story when I went to Cardiff in Wales one time. That's an interesting tale.
Oh yeah.
Almost 23 hours of travel to get there.
Oh, that
And,
wasn't. Yeah.
and the funny part was, because there's not a direct flight into Cardiff, we flew into Heathrow, and then I took what's an equivalent in the United States. They have Greyhound buses. In the England they have the National Express.
Yep.
So I took this bus from Heathrow all the way to Wales, taught for 2 weeks, and then had to take the bus back to Heathrow afterwards. And it was funny. I got into a conversation with the driver, and we became rather good friends on the 4-hour drive. And then during the week in between, I'm walking through downtown Cardiff, and there he was. And he's standing there in front of the National Express office. And I said, I know you. And I said, see, I know somebody in Cardiff already. And so then on the way back home, what's the odds? But sure enough, so I get on the bus to head back home. And then they said, well, we'll have to make a stop and switch drivers. And so they went to this little town outside of Wales. And the driver that took us out of Cardiff walked out. And then all of a sudden, here comes Ray again, walking onto the bus. And I said, not you again. So for 4 hours back to London, we just talked a little bit more. And he asked me, he said, did you go to those places I recommended? And I says, yes, most of them. So that was fun. That was kind of my one of the nicest moments in training, and missing travel, by the way, missing travel out there. So shout out to any managers that might be listening, but that was some great times to go to all over let's see, you've been all over the world too, Richard. What was one of the favorite places you had to visit?
Well, back before COVID, when we actually traveled, I taught classes in Bozeman, Montana, and Oklahoma City, and Dayton, Ohio, and of course Cardiff, Wales, and Dublin, Ireland, and London, and Sutton, and Maidenhead over there in England, Berlin,
France.
Nîmes in France was really good. Of course, I've taught in Sao Paulo, Brazil, several times. I've even been to Shanghai and Manila teaching ECL. So thank you, LexisNexis, for making my passport stamp collection very large.
And you were very happy that you could speak Mandarin when you were over there in China. I remember that story one time.
Oh yeah, I would get into a cab, and I did study Mandarin Chinese in 1970 when I was in the Air Force, and so I'd get into the cab and I'd say, "Well, yao piao," which says I need a receipt. And half the time the cabbie would start talking to me in Mandarin. I say, whoa, I don't remember that much. just take me to the place out in the car that it shows me, and
well, and now we have apps that makes everybody sound like a rock star, so you don't have to study for 8 months. You can just download an app and you can be speaking Mandarin with somebody. It's
yeah, well, you mean the app will be speaking Mandarin, yes.
Right. Yeah, it's a different world we live in for sure.
Yeah, interesting language.
Right.
Oh, and one of the, I think one of my favorite classes was when I taught for a couple of weeks in Melbourne, Australia. That was nice. I really liked Australia. I came back.
Uh-oh.
With a hat. And if you can see, let's see. Well, there you go. It's a kangaroo leather. Great hat.
And with that, I think we're out of material. I'm going to go ahead and stop
Ba-dum-ching.
sharing right now. We've got it's about 45 minutes after the hour. I think they've heard enough of us. The most
Oh,
important
yeah.
thing is to go out, grab those books, sign up for training. We've got all kinds of resources. And again, the core documentation, the effort of the HPCC Systems team, always, scheduling events like this. We're here for the community. And we want the community, all we're asking for the community is come back with suggestions, help us make the platform better, contribute, give us your ideas on how we can make this better for everybody else and that's using the platform. Let me see. I think there's one new message that popped into the chat here. Is it possible to read or access this book online, Richard? That's the question.
Absolutely. You can it's free on Amazon as a Kindle book, but if you want it just to be online, it's also available on Google Play.
Google Play.
All the books are available on Google Play. And may I say that as you guys read these, if you see a typo, believe me, I worked hard to make sure that there weren't anything in there. But if you see a typo or any have any comments about or approaches or questions or things like that, I am richard.taylor@LexisNexisRisk.com. At least as long as I keep working here.
Which not for another, at least another 20 years.
Yeah, I don't think the spousal unit's going to go for that much, but okay.
Well, I think that's about it. I think we're almost at 47 minutes past the hour. Thank you very much, Richard, for your insight, for all the hard work that you've done on these books. It's a pleasure working with you. And
well, it's a great pleasure for me to be doing this and to write these things, because my mission in life is to teach everybody ECL that needs to learn ECL or that wants to learn ECL. If you want to learn, I'm ready to teach you. That's what it's all about.
Amen. All right, Richard, thank you very much. Thank you for all of you out there that joined us. And remember, just send an email to richard.taylor@LexisNexisRisk.com or robert.foreman@LexisNexisRisk.com if you have any questions, any follow-ups here. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your Friday with us. Everyone, enjoy your weekend. If you're a basketball fan, enjoy the basketball in the States. And we'll see you again when we see you. All right. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.